Hello and welcome to NJBIZ Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Ganaj. My guest today will be familiar to most NJBIZ readers. It's Michele Siekerka, President and CEO of the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. Michele, welcome back.
So nice to be back. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. Now, I have to start with your 10-year anniversary leading the organization. My colleague Matt Fazilpour spoke with you at some length about that, and our viewers can read that online at njbiz.com and in our October 28th print edition. But I hope you would tell us a little bit about what you're thinking as you reflect over the last 10 years. How do you assess where you are now and where you were?
Hmm. First of all, I can't believe it's 10 years. I feel like I blink an eye and here we are, right? And my joke has been I only feel like I aged about 100 in the last 10, but that's okay. It's been gratifying. It's been stimulating. We've certainly had a couple of challenging things along the way, but it really has been a period of transition and transformation for the organization. We went through a pivotal change in our business structure, no
Right.
longer being kind of connected at the hip with NJM and that insurance requirement
Mhm.
as part of a trust that we belong to for over 100 years, right? And
Right.
so now we've been in the process of really transforming the organization for the future, looking at what other types of products and services businesses like those who choose to be members of NJBIA need in order for us to address the issue of affordability and regional competitiveness here in the state of New Jersey. I'll just add to that, extremely proud of the business community that I have the privilege each and every day of standing up and advocating for. And I think we do it very respectfully, with a lot of oomph, with a lot of research and data behind us. And I always say I'm proud of what we do, but I'm even prouder of how we do it at NJBIA.
Okay, very good. I am curious, though, about how your experiences over the last decade match up with your expectations going in. Now, obviously, no one could have expected a deadly global pandemic that would decimate the economy. Obviously, I guess that's one thing that probably you weren't counting on. But what else? What has been some sort of surprising to you over the last 10 years? Something you didn't expect, or something that was more important than you thought it would be,
Well,
or
when
less important?
Absolutely. Well, when I first came in the very beginning, the board was not anticipating a separation from NJM.
Okay.
So it was really more of, how do we leverage who we are today? It was like, how do we put window dressing on what is already an amazing organization, right? So as I like to say, I was here to take the organization from great to nirvana. What was the next best iteration of ourselves? Because it was already a great organization for
Right.
5 years at that point in time. And then, of course, it came all these different changes. And certainly, COVID was an incredibly pivotal period of time being at the helm of an organization like this, where we became really the center of everywhere that business went for their information, for their
Mhm.
outreach, just to understand what was going on. We were interpreting, rules and regulations in real time, 24/7. And there was no membership wall during that time. It was for
Okay.
any business in the state of New Jersey.
Okay. Now, one thing I did want to ask, one specific issue I'm curious about, and how you've seen it change over the years, and that is the role of women in business. Just before I got on here, I was on a call, a planning call for our Women's Leadership Summit, which is on November 14th. I know your organization runs an
Yes.
event, at least one event every year, and you are a woman in business. Have attitudes changed significantly over the last decade or so, or are women still facing the same sorts of difficulties that they had, back in the bad old days?
So, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. I would say that I, very proudly have seen things coming along slow and steady, right? Can never be quick enough to get to true equity. COVID really set it back.
Okay.
Because COVID had a disproportionate, disparate impact on working women, for sure,
Yeah.
because of the childcare challenges and concerns, and just the family situations that came out of COVID. So it really took women much longer to get back in, which held them back again. Women still seem to be the lead when it comes to child rearing. So women have to step out in order to do that and then come back. And the data, because we always look at the data stalled a bit. So actually over the last 2 years, from a women on boards perspective, that number slipped just a little bit. So
Okay.
it's moving ahead, but it's kind of like two steps forward, one step back, then we get stuck a little, then maybe we propel, but we need a flywheel. Like we need a flywheel. That said, I feel as though the momentum is stronger and richer than it ever was. And through our Women Business Leaders Forum, it is incredible to me if I look back 10 years and I look at the women in the room and I look
Mhm.
at some of our rising stars and the young leaders and where they are today and how the leaders of today are really reaching back and bringing up the next generation, so much more intentional. The rooms are, the rooms are very energetic, and I see a lot of men as sponsors of women coming up as well, which is a little bit of a departure as well.
Okay. It's interesting that you say the pandemic sort of set things back, and I guess I think that sounds right to me. And you have the statistics,
Yes.
I'm sure, to back it up, because I can remember seeing research before the pandemic about how companies had sort of come to realize that really a diverse board that includes women, diverse leadership, C-suite, really improved financial performance. And at that time, everybody seemed to sort of move on from them, and say, okay, great, we've accomplished something, but there's still more to do. As I just heard, as I said, from this planning board.
No, agree. And the issue really was women coming back into the workplace. They were out longer. It was more difficult for them. They were more challenged, and that caused a lot of them to have to just step back from commitments and things. So
Yeah.
not surprising. And I think maybe just the last piece on this is we've had ebbs and flows in our bigger society around issues of
Right.
DEI, and I think that confounds a lot of this.
Okay, right, yes, and there has been sort of a cultural backlash to some of these issues, and that doesn't help, obviously. So,
Yes.
okay, then bringing it back in the discussion back to the present then, when I talk to business owners, corporate executives, I hear a familiar litany of complaints or headwinds, challenges,
Yes, yes.
high costs, starting with taxes and regulation, supply chain issues, hiring and retention. Some of those were exacerbated during the pandemic. I'm curious as to whether you're hearing the same things, number one, or number two, are there new concerns bubbling up that maybe we haven't, maybe we in the media haven't become aware of yet?
So, I mean, cost of business always remains at the top for sure. We do our business outlook survey, every year. We're just getting the results back. We'll have that out in December. I don't think we'll be too shocked about some of the things that we see in there, right? Some of the
Right.
same issues, healthcare costs, regulatory costs, the cost of mandates. I mean, this is a perpetual, and we keep saying, we say to our legislators, would you please listen to us? This means something. It really, really does. And we see that more and more. So that continues to be a challenge. I will tell you that how we work and where we work is a constant challenge for
Yes.
business because they're having to lean in on what is remote, hybrid, et cetera. How do they maintain good culture? How do they deliver their products and services in the best ways that they can, given the change in the workforce? That's not just COVID. That was starting before COVID with the next generation worker, but COVID again ripped the Band-Aid off of that. And you
Hmm.
see today that, there's much more hybrid and companies are very challenged in forcing their workforce to be back in 100%.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. All right. Now, again, staying on the issue of costs, we just had a panel discussion about energy, and obviously, the cost of energy, particularly for manufacturers, is a massive issue. The Murphy administration has set some ambitious goals for moving away from fossil fuels. What I heard in that discussion, what I've heard from other business owners is that the technology just isn't there to do all of the things that the government right now wants to do. Are you hearing the same thing, number one? And number two, is it reasonable to set those kinds of goals given the state of technology now, or should that train be slowed down a little bit?
Yeah, no, we definitely want to have aspirational goals when it comes to clean, green energy,
Sure.
right?
Mhm.
110%, but we have to be realistic in how we get there and the pace of getting there. We can't get ahead if there's no best available technology to take us there, right? We
Yeah.
can't get ahead if the capacity isn't there to receive what we want. We should be concerned that we've got all this innovation and AI coming our way, and that results to clouds and tech centers and tech hubs, and we don't have capacity for these tech hubs.
Right.
So what are we gonna do with that? How are we gonna get these great projects online? How are you gonna plug in all the cars you want to plug in when the grid is not available for that right now? When you've got economic development projects sitting out there not able to plug in too, and then the issue of affordability, of course, right? So there's best available technology to take us there. What's the cost of the technology at what point in time? And you can't overextend on the consumer base. They have to be able to afford the products and services that you need them to consume in order to get to your goals.
Okay. By the same token, the climate change, it will also impose costs on businesses, and on the other hand, you have your utility bill in your hand right now that has to be paid, and on the other hand, you're hearing that climate change is something that's going to
Yes.
hit, really affect us in the future. Um, how do businesses approach? How does that calculus work out for businesses? Do they think, yes, we really do have to move in that direction, or do they think, you know what, I really need to to get these costs down, and you can't impose, as you say, you can't impose mandates on me. You can't make me do things that I can't afford to do right now.
Yeah, it's all a balance. This isn't going to be a one size fits all. It can't be a cookie cutter approach.
Okay.
Companies are all in very different phases of their own existence, and they're all different sizes, and they all have different capacity needs when it comes to energy. And so I think you have to really be mindful, and a company has to sit and look honestly at their own, their own footprint and understand what their trajectory is going to be and what they're going to need to get there. And I think if folks do need to look long term, we need to be very big minded here, but we need to be practical in the steps to get us there.
Okay. All right. I want to talk a little bit about manufacturing. We spoke briefly at Manufacturing Day from the NJMEP, New Jersey Manufacturing Extension Programs. Manufacturing Day, a record turnout apparently. I'm curious what you thought of the event, and why do you think some of those kinds of things are important?
Yeah, it was a great event. We look forward to that each and every day. I'm on the board of the National Association of Manufacturers, and I'm
Right.
the incoming chair for the Conference of State Manufacturing Associations. So I work with my colleagues across the entire country every day on these issues through those connections. And look, manufacturing is a significant industry. That's the history of NJBIA. We were born and bred as the New Jersey Manufacturing Association. So we continue to be the vertical voice for manufacturing on lobbying, but obviously horizontal for all other business. And we want to provide the good products and services that they need so that they can stay here. My big concern for manufacturing, especially in New Jersey, we very much feed the aerospace and defense industry.
Okay.
And when our companies are bidding in on national contracts, they start with a minimum of like a 10% premium because of the cost of doing business here in the state of New Jersey. They have
Okay.
to eat that because they
Mhm.
can't put that into their proposal, right? It'll make them ill competitive with companies from across the country. So we hear that every day. Pete Connolly, who leads NJMEP, I like to say we have an Uber partnership right now. We've really taken to the next level how we work together. They, as manufacturers, being their clients. And then providing, the education, the training that manufacturers need to be lean and efficient. And then us coming in and making sure that the environment for them is rich and one that they can grow in. But I'll tell you, Jeff, these manufacturers get a call each and every day
Right.
from all across the country. People want to pitch them. I get calls. I just got another letter from XYZ state saying my recruiter is going to be in town next week. Would like to stop by and talk to you. That competition is real. And look, maybe we can't compete with Texas or Florida or Georgia today. We better start trying, right? But we can't even compete with Pennsylvania right now, whose corporate business tax is going down below 5% when ours just went up to 11.5, the largest in the entire country by far.
Okay. Well, then is that the biggest part, the biggest policy change that you think is necessary to get that tax burden down? Whether it's property taxes or the corporate tax or the transit fee. I mean, all of the government the
Yes.
government payments that companies have to make. Is that the biggest segment of the
Three,
biggest thing that needs to be reformed?
well, I'll say three key
Okay.
things, okay? Property tax. There's a lot of property tax relief programs in the state of New Jersey today. None of them recognize that New Jersey business pays almost 50% of the property tax in this state. So
Okay.
Anchor's not available to them, state of New
Right.
Jersey's not available to them. And for a minute, think about those smaller companies. And on manufacturing, a lot of our manufacturing companies are smaller. They're not the big pharmas, okay? Uh, Corporate business tax for companies like the big pharmas. You just heard the news a few weeks ago. J&J is growing down south. They're not growing here. They're not
Mhm.
picking up their headquarters and moving it, thank God. But you know what? Stagnant's not good. We need
Mhm.
growth here in New Jersey. And the
Right.
third thing, again, is the cost of regulation. I could ask any one of my companies who has facilities in New Jersey and elsewhere to line up the costs of regulation to deliver their product and service. It's an uber premium here in New Jersey. We have to get a handle on it.
All right. Okay. Very good. All right. Before I let you go, I'd like to talk a little bit about the future. first of all, I'm curious what you think the business climate is going to look like as we go forward. A lot of uncertainty right now. Big election nationally coming up next week. Big election in New Jersey next year. Is that kind of political uncertainty a drag on businesses, on the economy generally, do you think?
Yeah, lack of reliability and predictability is always a drag. Always a drag. However, I think we've become so resilient to change because it's so dynamic and so fast paced that business handles it better than they did before. Also, all these companies are scenario building for 10 different types of scenarios and contingencies. Well, what if this? And then what's the second order effect of that? And what is this? And what's the second order effect of that? Right? So these companies are way savvy in how they're looking at, the future of the what ifs. Because it's such a dynamic time. So look, it's a week before the election as we're speaking right now, right? We don't know what the impact's going to be, but I think these companies are ready to be resilient and respond to what might be coming at them because they've thought about it. We're very excited about the fact that we have a governor's election next year, right? Governor Murphy is in the last year of his term. We have some very excellent candidates who have presented themselves to be governor who have tremendous plans for New Jersey. So I'm looking forward to seeing these horses in the race and how their agendas are going to go. And I want to see who makes it through the primary. And that NJBIA is ready. Well, we're already doing it now with the candidates, right? But the day after the primary, we've got an agenda to hand to those two candidates to say, work with us now and let's set your platform and see who becomes governor. And we'll be ahead of that race too.
Okay, well, the second part of that was what I was curious as to what you're hearing from members about their confidence, their optimism. It sounds like they're preparing for a lot of different possibilities. In general, are they confident? Are they optimistic? Do they see growth in the future, or are they cautious?
I would love to say, we had years ago, I would use the term, cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
I'd say that while we try to while we try to keep our glass half full all the time, I think we're very pragmatic about what the challenges are that lie ahead. Look at our fiscal budget here in the state of New Jersey. The next governor coming in, that budget is like a bust, okay? How are we going to get around that? And what are we doing today to think about that? Not to think about it in February 2026. And I think we have some candidates that are thinking long and hard about that. And I think we have some candidates that are more mainstream, middle. I'll remind us all that New Jersey is a very moderate state. At the end of the day, we tend to be very purple, right? And we're not bleed blue and we're not diehard red. We are more in the middle. And so I'm excited that we have candidates who are more moderate and in the middle. And I think we can have some good opportunities, maybe at some good problem solving solutions that will take into consideration the needs of the business community.
Okay. And finally, I have to ask you, what's ahead for the next 10 years? What are your biggest challenges and priorities? If you don't want to look 10 years down the road, say 10 months down the road.
Sure. I mean, I'm going to say I'm a 1, 3, 5 year looker. Okay. And because everything is so dynamic these days, that 1, 3, 5 is it's like very fast, right? So one is like, the now. Where are we now? What do we need to be preparing for, in this immediate moment? And right now, a lot of that is about getting through this presidential election, letting the dust settle, and seeing how some of this federal policy affects us here in New Jersey and making sure we're staying ahead of it. And again, I feel very honored that I have the lens through my board seat at NAM to have a higher seat, like on some national issues. And we work really well with our congressional delegation. So hopefully, we're going to have a new senator as well. So how is that new senator going to, going to receive working with the business community in their new role, right? 3 years obviously is going to be bringing the next governor in. So we're already working on what does January 2026 look like? We've got a blueprint for our agenda of what the business community needs come January 2026. I'm looking forward to working very closely with that new administration, the leadership and who they surround themselves with. To execute on that agenda on behalf of business community. And from there, if I think 5 years out, that'll be dated by tomorrow because of how the changes that we'll have.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there then, and we'll get you back at some point to talk about the 5 years or beyond.
Look forward
Michele
to it.
Siekerka, President and CEO of the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. Thank you very much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it, and I do hope you'll come back.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It was wonderful. So glad to catch up.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.